It's a lovely morning or evening or the middle of the night. When do you listen to Waterproof Records? I gotta know. Do you start your day with me in your ears, or do you drift off to bed to sleep, cozied up, going, what albums, what music shall Jacob and I discuss this evening? Is that the kind of relationship we have? I hope so. That's what I think of when I think of you. Yes, you. It's another Waterproof Records, your unsinkable tunes from the past, present, and future. You know, that's the tag that I wrote when I put the show together, and I feel like I don't say it enough because it's awesome, right? Your unsinkable tunes from the past, present, and future. Come on! It's as good as the Waterproof Records story. I am excited. It's another guest episode, and before I introduce her, we're going to kick things off with the tunes, but I'm here to let you know, well, you already know because you clicked on the title and you saw it and it's in the description and everything, so it's really not a surprise, but let's just pretend for a moment that it is, okay? It's time to talk about Kate Bush, The Dreaming, with my guest, Allison Scagliotti. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
But you know, before we get down to brass tacks, I have to thank and shout out my sponsor, DistroKid. Couldn't do this show without DistroKid, and you know, you hear me talk about it every week, but honestly, if you're putting your music out there, it's one of the coolest services available. And in all of my social media and on the link to this podcast, link to YouTube, everywhere you go, I have a special VIP link that you can use. It gives you 30% off your first year of DistroKid. That's pretty remarkable. DistroKid is your chance to get your music, your songs, your singing, whatever you're playing. If you're playing like the bongos and that's all it is, you can put it out on DistroKid. You can have an album, you can have a single. They will put your music on every platform available, Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you want it to be. And it makes it so easy because it's there. And then you can collect those royalties. You can share with the other writers and musicians that are on the albums. That's easy through splits. But go make sure you check out, it's distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Make sure you get that discount off, and I highly recommend what they do. I love DistroKid, and I'm so happy that they support this show. So now you've been so patient, and you've seen, if you're watching the show, the majority of you listen, but if you're watching the show, you see the laptop in front of me, and you know it's got a guest. The guest is waiting. They're in the wings. If we were on stage right now, the curtain's back, and she's off to the side over there before the show begins. The show is going to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone listening right now, please welcome my friend, my guest, Allison Scagliotti. Welcome to Waterproof Records.
Salutations, Jacob. Little did you know that the wings, that brief moment before stepping on stage is my absolute most favorite place in the world to be.
I did not know that. It is a great place.
It's that split second of anticipation, that liminal space between all the preparation you've done and the moment of performance. That's just, it's magical.
Oh.
Can I just tell you though?
Yes.
Hearing you say my name in the same breath as Kate Bush gave me a little frisson just now. I was really not prepared to hear our names uttered in the same breath, even though this album was of my choosing. So
I know. I love it. I love it. You've kicked off my show in such an articulate, well-spoken way. I love this connection that we have to the theater. I love the choice you made because it's very, everybody who listens to the show, as I bring on more guests, I'm starting to have the opportunity to branch out of, my musical landscape I'm known for the 90s, even though I listened to obviously stuff well before and after. But I'm known for that decade primarily. And so when I have a guest and they choose something that's like, oh, I'm not as familiar, I'm really excited about it. This is my moment of waiting in the wings where I'm kind of like, where will this go? This is an improv show, if you will. So I'm so happy that you agreed to come on. And for those who watch, like I mentioned, a lot of people listen to the show, so they don't always see my guests, they hear the voice. But if you recognize that voice, if you recognize that name, she is an actress. I should have said that up top. Actress and musician. Has been working in the business for quite some time, and you may recognize her from her breakout roles on Drake and Josh, which was where it all really blew open for you. And then Warehouse 13 and Stitchers. That's the other one.
That's correct. Yeah.
Those are some of the shows that you were on, and no, not a little part. These were main roles in these series. So very, very cool. So let's kind of kick things off a little bit, just talking about what made you arrive. You're here on the West Coast with me, and that's how we met. But where did you grow up?
So I have to acknowledge that I just hit my 21-year anniversary in Los Angeles in January. My career is officially old enough to order a martini. Finally.
Yes.
But I came to Los Angeles by way of New Orleans.
Wow.
Where, my love of all things decadent and opulent was fostered. My parents took me to see theater from a very young age. I was in piano lessons and ballet class. I was just I was an artsy little girl, right? Yeah. I wasn't interested in scouts. I wasn't at all coordinated in, team sports.
Yes.
I was just a little weirdo who fell in love with the stage and with storytelling primarily. You know what I mean?
We are one and the same. We are one and the same. Yes.
I love it. So I've been here for 21 years. And it's really it's a daunting number to think about. And it's funny, you just mentioned Drake and Josh. And I never would have thought, Jacob, because I was 13 years old when I first appeared on that show, and I only did 8 episodes.
Wow.
I was never under contract, never went to the Kids' Choice Awards. I think the only time I ever did I know. I told you I was a weirdo. I wasn't one of the mainstream little starlets they wanted to trot across the orange carpet, and that's totally fine with me.
Yeah.
But I was 4 years younger than the boys. It was not to de-romanticize it, but just to be totally realistic about it. It was a job, I was a latchkey kid who grew up watching TV Land. That was my real, my first education in the art of landing a joke in the sitcom format, Yeah. And so to have that opportunity on such a big show, I was in work mode. I was a little pro. And what 13-year-old, gets an audition and goes, okay, I'm going to base this character on B.B. Newworth's role in Frasier. That should give you an idea of how many friends I had.
Yes. Well, I can relate. I mean, obviously, so to give some context on how you and I even got introduced, I met you through music. That was our introduction. We both have done things with this cool amp company called Positive Grid. And we were basically at this thing called Jam Lab. And my role at Jam Lab was, they came to me. I'd done a few things with them. And they'd said, hey, we just want you there kind of, as the social host, the person who can encourage. Because when you get a room full of, actors, you don't need that. But if you have a room full of musicians, oftentimes there could be a lot of introversion. There could be a lack of are they going to communicate? Are they going to be able and comfortable with playing stuff? And so they brought me in for that. And so when I met you, you were this guitar player, this really cool guitar player, but we got along really well in a very short amount of time. I was like, there's something cool about you. We get along. And hearing all this
confession about that, Jacob.
What?
I feel so silly, but it's true. That evening that we met, I didn't realize this, but I think the algorithm had shown me one of your videos, not the day before.
You're kidding me.
I'm serious. And I had that sort of, moment of brain fog where I thought we knew each other already.
Oh, that's so good though.
It was one of your, what it was
reactions.
Like hearing this song in the 90s for the first time videos,
right.
Which you just busted me up. I thought it was great. And so when I saw you, I had that moment of oh, it's him.
I love it. I love it. That happens to me more and more, where I'll be walking through places and people kind of go like, "Oh, hey, man," and I'll have this panic, and I'll go like, "Is this somebody that I know?" You know, because I've been in Los Angeles. We almost are celebrating the same anniversary because I arrived in 2001, and so I'm just entering into my 22nd year. Yeah. I'm trying to do the math in my head. So I've been here around the same amount of time. And so it's been a long road out here of working various jobs and trying different industries. And so people will see me and they'll say it. And then they'll say, hopefully they'll go, "I love your TikToks." And I'm like, okay, that's how they know me. It's not somebody, but
I'm not
what I
face
love,
blind. I really
you're
just
right,
don't know this person. Yeah.
right. But your familiarity with me and us kind of assuming that we knew each other. And I kind of had a feeling about you too. And maybe I'd seen you on television and because of your work with sci-fi, you'd been on some, podcasts with some of the same. I'd been doing stuff in my, like around 2011, 2012, 2013, I was making content for Machinima, which was yeah. I mean, they don't exist anymore, but I was making these web series and I was running around with all those people making that online content, which was like the nerd community, right? It was like the nerdist, the sci-fi, which I love and I'm a big fan of. And so when I saw you as well, there was this familiarity of like, do we know each other? And so we got along swimmingly, I must say. And
the two hams in the room were just like heat-seeking missiles.
Yes. And then finding out, that you just now hearing about your upbringing in theater and the acting and performance and your love of that, it just makes perfect sense. Us theater kids tend to find each other and get along really well. And so I knew you. In that way. Yes, it's so true. Did you ever see that? It's so funny. I know this is the worst to describe a SNL sketch, but it was that song, the Crucible Cast Party or the Crucible Rap Party. Oh my God. It was a music video that SNL did a couple years ago. And I sent it to every theater friend I ever had because it was all about being in plays and going to like the cast party after the Crucible. And I was like, anyway, I will share it with you after the show.
Please do.
Yes. But we got along and we connected on social media. And it wasn't until then that I was like, okay, she clearly, when she started out in Los Angeles, it was industry focused in terms of the entertainment industry, like acting and being on screen, and you're still doing that as well. But music has also just taken would you say it's taken a little bit of the lead in your life right now, or no, not necessarily?
It completely has.
Okay.
It's what I do full time now. And
I love it.
I was so lucky that, to go back to what you said about when I first came to Los Angeles, yes, absolutely. My focus was, being a child actor. And at that time, I think the landscape has changed a lot for kids now, thankfully. But at that time, the expectation was you're homeschooled. You're not in any other kind of tuition-based, regularly scheduled extracurricular. Because if that had been possible, I would have stayed in ballet.
Right.
You devote your life entirely, and even your education is sort of sidelined, to be available at the drop of a hat, to tape an audition, to go film on location or something.
Right.
But, I, like we've established, I'm a little storyteller kid. And so it's very, I think most actors struggle with the idea that when you're not actively creating a character, when you're not actively working, where does all of that creative energy go?
Yes.
And, I knew how to read music. I loved the piano, but the guitar is quite a bit more portable. So
it is.
So I started my journey with the guitar when I was about 13.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just always something that was just for me, that, was a creative passion that I could nurture, that I didn't have to worry about paying the rent with. Right. And it was just mine. And so now it's so bizarre that I'm in my 30s and music is sort of a full-time
That's awesome.
thing.
I love
and
it.
has eclipsed, I shouldn't say eclipsed, but has filled various creative voids in my life for a really long time.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. And I moved to Los Angeles as an aspiring actor. That's why I got out here. I went to University of Illinois, Urbana, and I was a stage actor. And, like most of us who went to programs or conservatories or whatever, it was like you had two paths. You either go New York or you go LA. You either go Broadway or you go Hollywood. And when I was living in the Illinois area, I kept thinking to myself, I was in musicals and plays. I had no film background. I had no interest in Hollywood as the end goal. It wasn't until
similar. It's
yeah, isn't it right?
It's the same.
It's one of those things that I wasn't even thinking of it, and it wasn't until the end of my time there that I befriended somebody who lived here and got involved in making shorts and whatnot, and that kind of changed the trajectory. And I showed up here married. I got married when I was 22, 21. She was 21, I was 22. We're still married, and starting out in Los Angeles to try to make it as an actor, as a married couple, was a foolish idea, a very foolish idea, because it wasn't. It's a craft that really requires you to be focused solely on yourself and handling yourself, and you can't be focused on, hey, who's gonna feed us both, And
right.
so
building a life with someone and the stability that it requires to do that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There was a lot of that, and so it became this thing, not to get into too much of it, but it became this thing where it was like, well, I'll go get the day job and you pursue that. And it just became such an up and down. And so my life took me into so many different places. And what I love is that music is the most centering thing that has happened to me in a long, long time. Right before the pandemic, I started to just kind of think to myself, I don't really care about the entertainment industry, as in film and TV. Like, I was making short films on my own, but I'd lost all that kind of desire of look at me, look at me, look at me. It really started to wash away. And this is pre-pandemic. And then when it did happen, and the music thing and the TikTok thing happened, it really brought me back home in a way, because there's something so pure and simple about loving an artist, sharing a love of music with other people, playing, writing. There's just no bullshitting. It's who you are. It's what you're into. And I still love to perform, and I always missed that creative itch. But this has been a very fulfilling way to handle this kind of next chapter of my life. And I love that we have this so much in common, that music has really become, the favorite thing to focus our lives around. And I just thought that was so cool.
I love this too. And Jake,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a feeling we're going to keep finding these commonalities, but I too, again, you get started when you're 11 years old. You see how the sausage is made. And
I can't even imagine.
Was guilty of becoming really cynical, even in my early 20s, because I just felt like, oh, nothing means anything. Like you can be the hardest working, most professional, most trained, on paper, you can check all the boxes and still, it doesn't feel like your trajectory is entirely in your hands. Yeah. And that I really struggled with that. And so I too, right before the pandemic, was feeling really downtrodden about it. And then when we locked down, do you remember how many people were going live on YouTube to perform monologues?
Yeah.
Or shooting short, and this is in no way, judgmental of that. I
of course
totally
not.
understand where that impulse came from, right? We needed to get
something.
We needed to express ourselves in some way and connect with people, right? Yeah. But I felt just existentially, when it wasn't safe to leave our homes, I felt absolutely no impulse to try to make a short film. I was just like, we can't hug our families because we might kill each other. I don't care about making it short or doing a monologue. And I feel, my own self-talk is just so bad. I mean, this is the blessing and the curse of having 4 Virgo placements in my astrological chart, but I could be as productive as I could, I could be operating at the height of my productivity and still feel like I'm not doing enough. And in 2020, I can only look back and go, wow, that was really kind of prolific. I released my full-length French concept album.
Yes.
Then I wrote 2 EPs, a pair of singles, and then January 2021, I cranked out my second French album, Vampire. And I look back at that and I'm like, where did that spurt of inspiration come from?
Right.
Because I
Right.
felt, a tremendous amount of confusion and existential dread, and how realistic is it even to be a professional creative in this new landscape that we live in? I was ready to pivot and go get my master's degree in something, completely outside the arts.
I hear
and I
you.
might still, who knows?
Right.
But
I mean, jury's still out. Anything's possible. But this is so interesting because I too, after all the stuff that I'd been working on with other people in creative circles, and I had made a short film in 2018, and then 2019, I was thinking about that as well. And then I too kind of on the lockdown felt this, everybody was saying like, this is the perfect time to get your stuff done. And I felt really unable to do those things and work on those things. I just felt like I couldn't make it happen either. And
there's too much pressure in that too, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden we have the
Time.
kind of time, completely unstructured time that we pray for.
Yeah.
And we're like, and now what do I do?
Yeah. And it was like reflecting on it. I've reflected with a writer friend of mine about, back when I used to write more, he said, it's not like that there was an announcement and they said, hey, everybody, great news for the next 6 months to a year. You're all on vacation and you get to enjoy the next year of just being at home and like working on what there was a dangerous situation and there's not enough information coming out and we don't know what's happening. And so that puts you in high alert and you just don't know how to handle that. It wasn't a gift of time. It was kind of a consequence of time. And so that just makes you feel uneasy about even, there was a little level of like guilty conscious about, well, I can't use this time for myself. Right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And so many strange things, but I'm glad that it created for you at least an opportunity, silver lining, to create these albums. And I want to talk about La Femme Pendu. Am I saying it correctly?
Pretty close.
Say it for me.
With the French accent, it would be La Femme Pendu.
La Femme Pendu.
It
And
means the hanged woman. It's patterned after a tarot card.
I'm so glad you explained that because I read that about you. It's trying to do my research, but I read that it was from a tarot card, and I thought that was very cool. And for the audience, it's kind of like an alter ego for you. It's like a place where you get to explore this other version of yourself and this style and this universe that you've created. And could you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Oh my goodness, of course. Yeah, it's absolutely a character. I mean, so just for context, it took me years, but I finally finished my undergrad in music studies with Berklee College of Music. And prior to that, I had never written a song. I was one of those teenagers who would make you a million different playlists and tell you all about what I'm listening to and all my favorite things. And that love of music for me, and just the way that, again, my negative self-talk works, I was just so intimidated by the full lexicon of music. I thought, I have no idea what I even want to say. Right. I don't know what my sound would be. I don't know what my voice sounds like. All I knew is that I didn't want to do the coffee shop thing where my name is just the act. Right. Because, as we've said, we're theater kids, right?
Right.
I come from a place of, who is the character? Where are you in time and place? What is the visual mood? What is the tone of the story you're telling?
Right.
And through a number of different things, an amazing course at Berklee called Developing Your Artistry, and also just sort of having a little bit of time to myself to figure out what it is that Allison likes, as opposed to being an empty vessel to take on whatever character was my job, right?
Right.
led me to find the thing, which was, you know, this character, this French witch.
Yes, yes.
You know, and so the idea was, you know, just sort of throwing a whole bunch of things into the mix that activate me and that make me excited, and became the container for my storytelling through songwriting. And so it exists. La Femme Pendu, you know, is my project that exists at the intersection of film studies, feminism, and Francophilia. I know that sounds really pretentious, but those are just all things that are deeply part of me and what I love. You know, I grew up in New Orleans, and the influence of both French and Spanish culture is everywhere, from the street names to the architecture to the food. I'm a former child actor. I grew up speaking the language of film, and around the time I was kind of conceptualizing La Femme Pendu, got really into art house and folk horror films.
Yes.
And then, you know, being a baby feminist, you know, watching these films and speaking a romantic language that is so structured around gendered rules of grammar and vocabulary, all these things kind of went into the pot and boiled over. And I figured out the thing. And the album that we're going to talk about had such a tremendous influence on that. And so the first song I ever wrote is on my first record, Absolute Horror. And it's from the perspective of Rosemary in Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
Sort of, you know, so many of these horror films that I reference in my songwriting are directed by men, and yet they're, you know, led by a tragic female character. So there's, you know, to me, there are many layers to peel back.
Sure. I can imagine.
And you know, when I take a step, I very rarely go back and listen to my own music, which is so funny that, you know, we can labor over these things for months and months. And then once we put it out, we just can't listen to it anymore.
Right.
But once in a while, I'll realize, like, I forgot how this song I wrote goes. Let me just revisit it just to remember, what did I do there?
Right.
And I'll go back and I'll listen to a song and I'll be kind of surprised by the content of the songwriting, and something will, you know, sort of reveal itself to me, and I'll go, oh wow, I didn't even realize I was working out this personal thing through these lyrics that are about, I don't know, Suspiria, you know, or these lyrics that are about that movie The Witch, you know.
Yes.
And it's exciting. You know, I just really like having the container of a character.
Yeah. And it's almost all in French. Is there any that you sing in English?
One of the EPs that I put out during lockdown was this little kind of like New Orleans concept EP called The Legend of the River King. A lot of it's in English. The second to last song, I think, is in kind of like, it's a bilingual sort of Cajun conjuration. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I'm getting closer to writing in English, but I really, again, like, another filter, right? Like,
right.
Saint
It's a
Vincent,
character. It's a world, right? It's like that there are certain layers and boundaries that separate Allison from this world that you are in. And if you start to remove too many of them, then then they merge, right? Then you come out of it a little bit more.
Precisely. Yeah. And I mean, you know, all of my songwriting is personal.
Yes.
But, you know, once again, like, I want for the big red velvet curtain to come down before I wipe my makeup off.
Right.
And, you know, that will always be a really important part of the process to me. The same way that, you know, you watch like Annie Clark in interviews, right? And her persona in an interview is completely different than when Saint Vincent takes the stage in her latex, like shredding, screaming.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And that's a great reference point for people that, you know, don't think of it often. You know, they think of the artist that they see, but even the ones that are really well established, it's almost impossible to not create a persona in front of people. I'm only going to lean on it just because I know it so well. But even Billy Corgan, and being a fan of the Smashing Pumpkins, when you listen to his podcast, he's like, look, there's the guy that's on stage that you think you know, and then there's me, and it's almost impossible to not become, what people who perceive us to be, the audience that's watching, what they're going to fill in the blanks for. So it just becomes this thing. But also within our work, humans are just so interesting and multi-layered people. Within the same breath, we have two different thoughts of love and hate and, depression and joy. And we are so complex as beings that when we put art out there, it would be too simple to say, oh, it's just them. And I can see why. Even getting away from Allison Scagliotti, the singer-songwriter, it just allows a little bit more freedom to say it doesn't always have to be that person that you think you know, but it can be so much more. And that's, I think, what draws us in, even as creators and storytellers and actors and artists, and why we got into theater. At a young age, we saw... I get to pretend to be somebody else. I get to be on stage and be a killer. I get to be on stage and be this person. And there's an excitement in that. And that has nothing to do with us, for those who don't act and perform. That has nothing to do with like not wanting to be yourself. It's the excitement of knowing you get to inhabit like other worlds of story and creation,
If all I got to do was be myself, I'd be bored.
Right.
Like, why would I only write about what I know when through a character I can visit worlds and subject matter that is so far removed from my own experience day to day.
Yeah.
Suspension of disbelief, escapism.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's like if you go to, you hear the trope that people love to throw around when writing, write what you know. And it's like, yeah, if that was the case, then we wouldn't have science fiction. If that was the case, we wouldn't have horror movies. You can imbue them with real things from your life, but the brain gets to play in spaces that you dream of. And the moment you say, sometimes it's fun to write what you don't know and explore and find.
Take it beyond just the very literal experience of leaving a scarf at somebody's house. Right. And, make it about the ghost that came to visit you and talk about the experience of leaving something behind. I don't know.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And I'm one of those people. I mean, I love, and I love films that kind of make you feel like it could be centered and grounded in reality, but then they do one little thing that you go, oh, wow, this is really taking me into the realms of the unknown or the supernatural or the science fiction. And, you talked about your incorporation of horror. And I want to highly recommend everyone to go check it out. It is this kind of smoky, sultry kind of cinematic element with your singing in French. And when I heard it, I was like, wow. So being fluent in French, that's just a product of growing up in New Orleans, just it being part of your life. Is that how it came about?
No, I wish I could say that I started speaking it, that I knew Creole French or something from my childhood, but no, I just studied it in college. And I will say, I don't want to draw attention to my mistakes, but it is, very true that between the first record and the second record, my French improved so much. So I have a really hard time listening to the first album because I hear all of my errors on it.
This is the juicy exclusive moment that when you listen to Waterproof Records, you get to hear that there's I could have done better, and I'm getting better in that certain realm. I would never know as a non-French speaking person. I would never know. It's like the same feeling I get when I listen to Icelandic artists or even, Sigaros that sometimes are a nonsense language. It's like, it's about a feeling. It's about a mood. It's about a tone. Even when you look at the cover of Vampire, am I saying it right? It's spelled a little differently, right? It's Vampire.
Yeah,
but
right.
even
it's
the cover, the cover with your photograph with the gold fang it just...
Fangs.
Yeah, it has an aesthetic and a feel and all the imagery, it's very, Only Lovers Left Alive. That's a film that immediately comes to mind as I see blinds, shadows. I feel this kind of like nocturnal people. And never being. Yes, I got it immediately. I was like, I totally get what this is. I know what this vibe is, and I wanna stare out my window on a rainy day with a coffee and a cigarette. It has that energy to it. And don't smoke, kids. I'm just kidding. But I was gonna say that's the energy, and it is communicated so clearly without even understanding what you're singing about per se. And so has that been hard in terms of like reaching a English speaking audience while you're not singing in a language where they can look at the lyrics and know exactly what this is?
Yes, tremendously difficult. I come up against this a lot, and I think there's a particularly Western tendency, once again, to emphasize literality in lyrics and in the music that we consume, right? I think it's a byproduct of top 40, right? Of just like popular music, and that's fine, right? But it's supposed to be challenging. If I say this to people all the time who are like, and this hurts me deeply, I don't speak French. Do you have an English version? No, I don't.
I don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
It's French music. Like, release the need to be a sleuth about what the song's about. If you don't
absolutely
understand the language, or if you maybe recognize a couple words here and there, but the rest of it's mysterious, let that wash over you. Let it be exactly what you were just saying, Jacob. Like, let the vibe and the mood and the vision that it took to establish those things make you feel something and put you in a space. And that to me is the magic of music. I listen to music from all over the world, because there are so many different, styles and rhythms and scales and instruments that we're not used to, right? To our Western harmony trained ear, that can just totally transport you. And
yes.
And give, and I just find it so nourishing. I just feel like music can give you so much and fill you in these totally ephemeral ways.
Yes. And I think that's so well said, and why we are drawn in, and it is healing, it's restorative, and it has been for people like us that have been in various ways pursuing an industry and a career that it just doesn't help with a lot of that healing and nurturing. You got to do that on your own. That's a lot of self work. But music within itself is, it just comes with it built in. It's like, here, this is for you. It's a gift. And, it's so remarkable. And there's a great comparison. I hope you can, see the link in terms of hearing something and not knowing what's being said, but a memory I have of watching comedian Eddie Izzard, however you want to say it.
Yes.
I believe has just recently announced he's one of my all-time favorites. Now would like to be called Susie. So wonderful. I think that's fantastic. And I think fantastic Susie.
We love Susie.
Love Susie. So funny. And Dressed to Kill was one of those specials that I watched on repeat. And friends would come over and I would say, you got to watch it. And I would do bits. I would repeat it. I to this day, I still quote from it, cake or death. I still do those bits. But at the end of the special, he goes into this entire sequence where he's speaking in French. And he's doing a whole bit about a monkey and going under the table. And you don't know what he's saying if you're not a French speaker. But the moment you release and let go, you go, don't worry about it. Don't trouble your head that this is in another language. You start getting it, and it starts connecting, and you start feeling what is so funny and what is so why this is working universally. And
that is because there's music in comedy.
There's music in comedy. Because
absolutely. Comedy only works with timing.
Yes.
And what do we know about music, right? It's all about
timing.
Time. It's all about like note values and rests, and Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I totally
Yeah,
get
so
that.
that's a memory that I have of where when you do kind of let go of having to know everything. You said it well with sleuth. You have to know exactly. It's like you got to give into it, and that's hard for some people. So I would encourage, if you're one of my audience, that because it seems like in music, definitely people are of the lyrics camp and of the sound, the audio sound, and I'm of more of the sound. Much more of the music. I can listen to an artist for a long time. I've talked about this tons in the show. I can listen to an artist for years and I have no idea what they're even singing about, because it's just that instinctual feeling. But I would encourage everybody who listens to check out her albums. They're amazing, and you can find them anywhere. You can just look at La Femme Pendu, La Femme Pendu, and you can find La Femme Pendu. You can find them, and I think you're even doing a vinyl pressing right now that people should go purchase a copy and help her get those finished up. That would be amazing, right?
Yes.
So,
thank you.
but I really, really love that you came on, because I mentioned it to you when we were hanging out at a show that you were playing with. You were playing with a band that you are currently in, the Fainting Party.
Oh. Fainting Party. I love this band so much. It was such a happy accident to stumble into it. Just one of those, like, I was introduced to them by way of somebody whose taste I really trust, who was like, oh, these folks I know are looking for a guitarist for their post-punk goth trio. I was like, oh, I've never felt more seen, more known.
I know.
Yes.
Right.
Where do I
this
sign
is
up?
it. It's me. I love it. It's the Fainting Party, which I went and saw you play, and you were fantastic, and the group was fantastic, and it was great energy on stage. You guys had matching outfits that were very like kind of 17th century black kind of you described it to me what it was.
That was all Steven. Steven is the lead singer and bass player. Those are French priest's collars. Mm-hmm. That he ordered.
Of course they are.
Through some like ecclesiastical supply.
I loved it. It was perfect.
Really,
it set
really
this tone immediately. You're like, oh, I'm in for this. So good. And then you have
a Bar Sinister, so we really needed, there is a strict dress code at that venue, so we went
black only. You are ready to go right now with your black. You've got your entire ensemble. We could go to Bar Sinister right now.
I don't even buy blue jeans anymore because they'll sit and
why bother?
Disintegrate in my dresser.
But you have another band as well that you play with that I missed that last time you played. You play with another group as well, correct?
Yes, I'm more sort of backup auxiliary guitar for this band called Seven Horse.
That's what it was. Seven Horse.
Yeah, so Phil Levitt, the drummer, and Joey Callio, the guitarist, formerly of a band called Dada, very 90s moment.
I do. Yeah. I remember them.
You
yes.
remember Dada? Sure.
I do.
And so they've been Seven Horse is typically a two-piece, just the guys, and they've been doing that for about 20 years, but they put out a new record in the fall, and last May, Phil and I had experiences playing together by way of I call her my musical fairy godmother, Cherie Curry of the Runaways, because I pinch myself that somebody I idolized when I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to work with, and we've stayed friends, and she has connected me with all these magical experiences in my musical journey in Los Angeles, not least of which was playing a couple times with Phil Levitt, who turned around last May, reached out to me and said, I think you're a solid player. We're going to do this album release show at the Roxy, and we need another guitar. Do you want to, come by the garage and jam for a couple hours and learn these songs? I was like, yes. These are the experiences that I want to be having, these sort of magical moments of collaboration and sharing music. And so, I played nothing but Seven Horse songs for months. Seven Horse and then whatever
Right.
jam nights I was going to on the Sunset Strip.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
And we played the Roxy in November, and it was a real experience. I made my dad
Amazing.
fly out. I was like, Dad, I don't know when I'm going to play the Roxy ever again. So
Yes,
come
yes.
out. Come have a rock and roll evening with me.
I love it. You love those iconic spots, you know? It's a dream come true. But, you know, I've had you on already for so long, and we haven't even talked about Kate Bush. And it's so funny. This happened with a previous guest of mine. We got so much into life and journeys and connections that at some point in the podcast, we're like, oh, yeah, we're supposed to talk about Joy Division. That's what we were talking about. And that's what it was about. But with you said to me, because I always ask my guests, because one of the cores of this show, when I have a guest on specifically, is there seems to be an album that did it. That is, it's the one that it can happen early in life, it can happen later in life, but it's the thing that you hear that you can no longer resist creating music.
Yes.
You have to.
Yes.
And you said to me, I'll let you say what it is.
Jacob, it is unequivocally The Dreaming by Kate Bush.
Which I
remember where I was when I heard this record for the first time. I remember it vividly. I remember what it felt like in my body when I heard these songs.
Yes. Tell me, where were you?
Shall I? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm actually quite, I treasure this story because it's so odd that I can only imagine that, I don't think anyone has a story quite like this in terms of hearing this record for the first time. Maybe they have more interesting stories. Maybe they're totally banal. But this one really, I will hold this close to my heart forever. I was 19 years old. The first season of Warehouse 13 had wrapped, and so Sci-Fi was sort of sending me around all the unscripted adventure shows. So I was going to go make my first appearance on Destination Truth.
Okay.
Which
yes.
meant I had a long flight down to South America, and at that time, I didn't even have an iPhone at that point. I had a little iPod Nano, so I was in the mode of getting my airplane playlist together. And full credit has to go to my friend Tom Lieber, who has really shepherded my exposure to music that I couldn't really get anywhere else due to the fact that my parents weren't into it. I don't have brothers or sisters, and I wasn't, in public school with other people who could be showing me this. So shout out to Tom for being my honorary big sister.
Way to go, Tom.
Way to go, Tom. Tom said to me, girl, you in particular need Kate Bush in your spirit. So, here's The Dreaming and listen to it on your flight. Now, that's a really polarizing album to start with, as I'm sure you found in your research. It is wildly experimental. It came out before Hounds of Love and was not the commercial success that Hounds of Love is. She produced it entirely herself, which blows me away. This record is so, once again, it's challenging. It's weird, deeply weird to listen to.
It is.
She's constantly changing her key signature, so the timing gets a little disorienting sometimes. One of the things that I love about her performance on it is her commitment to her characters in her songs is so fierce. She's not afraid to make her voice ugly and offensive sometimes to the ear. Right. So I'm 19. I'm on an overnight flight from Los Angeles to northern Chile, and I took an Advil PM so that I could sleep.
Right.
And why that was the moment I decided to press play on The Dreaming, I don't know. But when I tell you I did not sleep on that flight because I was tingling all over. I felt like I was seeing new colors behind my eyes as I was hearing these songs, somewhere 30,000 feet in the air. it changed everything for me. I just thought, oh, you can do this. You can, it can be this theatrical and cinematic and not at all. I mean, and we know that these songs are very personal and about sort of the existential struggle that she's going through. But once again, it's through the lens or through the filter of like the closing song, Get Out of My House, is about The Shining. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
right. So there is that connection of looking at cinema, horror, this, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it was such a perfect choice. And I am a little embarrassed to say that my Kate Bush knowledge is not strong. Of course I know Hounds of Love, that's the one that everybody's familiar with. And she's recently had the resurgence in popularity because of Stranger Things, and she really gets a lot of credit for being groundbreaking as a female artist. And as I was reading up on this album and her use of I'm drawing a blank on it now, it's the Fairlight or something. It was this computerized
synthesizer.
Yeah, it was a synthesizer. Am I saying it? Was that what it was? I think so.
I think so.
CMI or something. And one of her albums is like the first one to ever use it as a studio release. I think the one in 1980, the Never Forever, is the first one.
I mean,
pioneer. And this is the same time that like Peter Gabriel and Stevie Wonder are using it, but they're just touring with it. It's not on their album. She's pushing forward. And then in my limited research time that I took, I saw also that the albums leading up to The Dreaming were a lot of songs she had recorded leading up to getting these record deals. She had a large catalog of music that she'd written, and this is really the first music that she begins to write after, she's on her own now, and she's having to write from a new vantage point of being this artist. And so you think of just taking such a bold creative leap like that and being so experimental to the point of where the label is going, I don't know what to do with this. And the public is going, I don't know what to do with this. What even is it? And it wouldn't be until years later that it would be hailed as like, what a masterpiece and what a thing that you can see is about to open the door for Hounds for Love. That's what it's going to do.
This is the record that she has to make to exercise all these demons out to clear the path to then make the masterpiece that is Hounds of Love. And to me, they're like companion records, right?
They
like
really are.
Hounds of Love can't exist until she has made The Dreaming, right? Like that is a step that cannot be skipped.
Yeah. Yeah. It's remarkable, and it is so experimental and fitting for us with theater backgrounds and that art and that character like you talked about. And I know that I want to tread this water lightly because my youth, my childhood growing up in the 90s, Tori Amos was my introduction to this universe. That was my introduction. And if you go online and you begin to even Google those two names together, there's a lot of backlash from fans, not necessarily from the artists themselves, about comparisons between the two and who started what and who led the path. Not from Tori. I surely didn't find really anything from Kate either. It's much more about their fan bases, about saying, these women are only 5 years apart in age, and they're really coming up close to the same time. And I think that it should be celebrated. These women should be celebrated as both being brilliant, creative songwriters and have, just...
They absolutely are, right? What they make is different, right?
It's different.
I've had Tom also took me to see Tori Amos, so it's really funny that we're... traipsing through this. But isn't it toxic that, like, instead of recognizing what a gift it is to have these female geniuses operating at the height of their talent and ability, that the tendency is to pit them against each other? Like, what a toxic and tribal impulse that is.
That's what I saw too. And I thought, why? Like, clearly they have their own thing, their own stories. And if you see similarities between artists, the thing is that being a woman, being a songwriter, being somebody who sits down at a piano and experiments and finds things and has to deal with, good God, the things that were happening in the music industry back then, and still happen to this day, but even more so with the blatant misogyny and, being a male versus a female and those kind of structures that were in place. Of course, these women would create things that you go, wow, I can see similarities between the two, but it is so toxic to pin them against each other and not just say, wow, Kate Bush, Tori Amos, both awesome, both kick ass, love them. You love them. Okay, great. It's like, let's just celebrate that they both do amazing things. And then when I listened to The Dreaming, I was like, there is so much of their worlds that I actually think that it's even cooler to be a fan of both, because I think that they both are so creative and out of the box and write those perspectives. I just really, this was a fun record to go through, because I was like, I didn't know what to expect. Every song was a new journey. It was like, what is she doing? It was crazy.
Right before we got on, I just listened to it top to bottom. And, there are some songs on this record that if I'm not careful, like if I'm feeling a type of way, I have to pull the car over, because it
Gets
hits
you.
me so hard. Like on Houdini, when Houdini, of course, this is a song she wrote from the perspective of Houdini's wife watching her husband drown, right? And first of all, that's a devastating story by itself. And then to take the emotionality of that story and put it to music and create a vocal performance that is in line with a woman watching the love of her life die in front of her. The emotion in Kate's voice when she sings the line, "With your spit still on my lips, you hit the water." Just saying that line, I need a second. I think it's brilliant theater, right?
It is. It's brilliant theater, and it's like those lines of dialogue when you're watching a fantastic movie and somebody says something and you literally go, oh, you know what I mean? Where you go, oh, just poetry and the words and the phrasing, the way it's uttered, and the same with songs. And it is theater. And what I love is every guest I've had come on this show so far, we all experience music in this way where it wrecks us a little bit. And it's like, I needed to pull over. I needed to take a moment. I needed to take some space and time. And I hope that everybody who listens to this has those moments, because it truly is remarkable when you give in and kind of surrender to the sound so much that it almost takes you a minute to return to regular life. And do you have a favorite on The Dreaming? Would it be Houdini?
I don't know. It's not Houdini, although that one really makes me emotional. I think it changes every time I listen to it, right?
That's fine. That's fine.
We could almost go track by track, and I could tell you like my favorite thing about each one, right? Like, for example, so Suspended in Gaffa, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is a song about the experience, what she imagines the experience of purgatory is, right? I had heard, before I heard this record, there was a cover of it by that precious, like, elegant collegiate band, Rah Rah Riot. Remember?
Oh, yeah. I remember Rah Rah Riot. Yeah.
When the sound was like Vampire Weekend, Phoenix's second record, Rah Rah Riot, this like very,
very specific time in music. Yes, yes.
It's giving Cape Cod. It's giving, frolicking through a pasture. And I thought it was a really beautiful composition. It's such a romantic song to me. And then I heard her version of it, and there's this kind of pa rhythm behind it. And then there's a really vulnerable vocal moment where she's not even singing. She just whispers into the microphone, "I'm scared of the changes."
Ooh, I need to go listen to this.
And that's another one that, like, when I think about it, when I hear it, when I say it out loud, the performance is so true. It's so real. Yeah. When she makes her, again, like, sometimes she's willing to make her voice ugly. Sometimes it's loaded with vulnerability, and that's one of those moments. I'm scared of the changes, she says. It just
oh, right in the feels. I love it.
Right,
I love it.
there,
There was
yeah,
another
I
one
mean-
that I only got to listen to it I think twice through, and so I need so much more to digest in there. But there were, when you said that willingness to kind of make it ugly or uncomfortable, or to do things to your voice that sound otherworldly, that was definitely what I was experiencing. There was a song on there, because I wasn't expecting, because she has such a pretty voice, that it would go to these places where there was like this one where you could hear almost like a scream in the chorus of this, like a real grittiness. And I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I can't remember what side. It might have been like Leave It Open or something like that. But there was something where she was saying like a refrain, and I was like, oh my God, it sounds like her voice is like tearing a little bit in there, and it was so impressive. I don't know what song it was, but
I bet it was Leave It Open. It sounds like Leave It Open. There's some howling going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, Jacob, this woman ends the album with Get Out of My House, where the last utterance, she has changed into a mule and is hee-hawing, okay? Like, it's not supposed to be pretty.
No.
It's not supposed to be sexy.
Yeah.
She changes into a mule to hee-haw at the entity she wants to get out of her house.
I love it.
I'm gone. I have to leave.
Done. Done.
She's a freaking genius, and this record is so powerful. I mean, the thing that twists me up too about the genius of Kate Bush is, like, she was signed when she was like 17 years old.
Yeah, that's what I found too.
But somebody with less vision would have rushed right into that experience. Kate Bush gets signed, and she says, I need another 2 years of dance training, because I know what it is that I want to do, and I'm not ready to do it yet. Right. And it's the vision for me.
Yeah.
It's the absolute, like, long game creative vision of, like, I'm not just gonna sing these songs. I'm gonna perform these songs with my entire body and create a narrative and create a performance. There are, you can find archival photos of her dancing. And I have one, like, in my favorites on my phone. It's just like young Kate in ballet class. And I look at that photo sometimes when I need the reassurance of, like, yeah, being a weird multi-hyphenate, it's okay.
Yeah.
It worked for Kate.
That is so cool. Yeah, and this album, it says, took her 2 years to do. 2 years of writing. And I mean, that's that kind of dedication. Yeah, that dedication, that focus. We definitely live in a world today where everything's immediate, and the moment you drop a song or put out a piece of work, people are already asking, what's next? What are you working on next? And it's like, just to get through, just to get through one thing, to finish your first novel, script, song, project, short film, whatever. It's just such a huge undertaking and task, and it's depleting in and of itself, that to put that time and energy into something, and then to be able to stand back and say, okay, now I'm ready to work on the other thing. But there's plenty of time to reflect and look and enjoy what just came out. And the dreaming is, I'm going to encourage my audience, if they're not familiar with Kate Bush and all you know is Hounds of Love, it's a weird journey, but take those steps into kind of experiencing something that you're not sure of where it's going to go, and listen to those sounds. There's a lot going on to that in that space. I was listening, and just all the different things that were being put in there, digitally and analog wise and vocally. And there was a lot of playing around, and I think it's really exciting. It's exciting. And we could use more of that today. We could use a little bit, like, it doesn't all have to be so sleek and pretty. It doesn't all have to be in a perfect little box. It should be a little wild. Art is meant to be kind of like, I don't know. Dangerous. I don't know what this person's doing. It's not, I can't put a sticker on it and sell it to anyone. That should be definitely what's available. Sure, if you like your slick, shiny thing, don't worry. There will always be plenty of that. But we should still make room for a little bit of this kind of innovation. So I'm so glad you chose it. Is there anything about Kate Bush and the dreaming from that time being on that flight, like, have you had a chance to see her live?
I have never seen her live, and it is the greatest. You know, she doesn't.
Does she not tour? I don't.
Lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
The last album she put out, 50 Words for Snow, she did, I think it was like just a 2-night engagement in London where she performed, I'm going to get this wrong. But
it's fine.
It was a total immersive, production.
Yeah.
Her son was part of it. I think at one point she was wired up and flew out over the audience.
Yes.
She's a visionary. And I think at that time she performed maybe half of Hounds of Love from, in its, in record order.
Yeah.
No, I wish I could see her live. I'm a big, go to a concert and then be so moved you're just ugly crying the whole time. Every time I've seen Patti Smith now 3 times, and every time I see Patti, I sob.
I am right there with you. I'm a concert crier. I've had to turn to people next to me and go like this. I'm sorry. This is just because I'm literally like blubbering to myself. So I'm right there with you on that. But if Kate Bush comes to Los Angeles, I'm going to join whatever group you're going with, because I've got to be there for that experience as well. So
to watch me weep.
Yes.
Yeah. Something that I want to add and I want to speak to is obviously Running Up That Hill,
wonderful song.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That's another one that, can make me emotional, right? Sure. Lyrically, the pounding rhythm, just all of it. It's an amazing recording.
Right.
And the fact that it blew up this year, and so a whole new generation of people who might otherwise not have been exposed to her work were suddenly like, oh, I love this song, right? It's the song from Stranger Things. Right. And my friends are like, are you feeling a little territorial? Are you being toxic fan? And I was like, no, you know what? I want people to know the shoulders that we stand on as, new musicians in a new landscape. And I would just encourage, folks who loved Running Up That Hill on Stranger Things, go back to the first record, listen to the Kick Inside. When she's 17, her voice is so high, and she sings a song about the novel Wuthering Heights, right? It's start from the beginning, make your way through the catalog all the way back up to Running Up That Hill to see the journey that she took to get there. And it's so rich, it's so rewarding, right? And the dreaming is that penultimate, it's the dark night of the soul before she emerges into the triumph of Hounds of Love. So
I'm so glad.
Don't let the just the awesome single be the end of your exploration of this amazing artist and human being.
I'm so glad you said that, and I'm so glad you're of the mind that the more the merrier. With the success of Stranger Things, I was asked not about Kate Bush, but about the Metallica thing blowing up. A lot of people were in my comments asking me about that as well. And I was like, I'm not bothered at all. Why would I be? I am thrilled that there would be an entire new generation of people that would find the music that is important to me and to so many others to be good and meaningful. And especially artists like these that they really were breaking down walls and trying new things and different at the time. And I think it's great. And I'm never territorial about my music. I never am. I'm always excited for people to learn. And if I could tell everybody to listen to everything.
Alternative? Oh no, it's just for us. And then it dies with us.
Yeah.
And the children can't have it.
Right. They can't have it.
Right.
It's that mentality from when we were growing up, and a band would be, you'd be into a band, or you'd be with a group of friends, and the band would start getting popular. And you'd always have that friend, or more than just that friend, that would be like, well, I'm not really into them anymore, since they're popular. And it's always so funny to me. And it's like, that's never been my feeling. The more success that a band has that I love, I'm thrilled for them, because outside of money and outside of fame, the fact that your art is being consumed by many is a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling, right? That's
This,
all we
this.
can hope for, you know?
I want her genius to be remembered,
Yes.
right?
As
Yes.
it should be. As it should be. Well, I am so happy we took this time. This is one of those shows that I didn't want to end, but I know that you have things that you need to do, and I am so happy that you took this time. And our friendship just got, like, we're 10 times closer now, just after this podcast, because, like, we were hanging out and already having fun, but now, I mean, geez, now look at all these connections we have.
Well, listen, now I'm going to call you, when I'm getting my tickets to see The Cure at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yes,
Be
I
like,
just
what section?
saw-
What
Oh, I
section are you
just
sitting
saw
in,
that.
Jacob? Let's link up.
Let's wear all black and go see The Cure. I saw the Cure announcement and I was like, I am not missing that. I've never seen The Cure live, which is just shocking for me. That's my brother's biggest band of all time. I adore them, but like the way Pumpkins is for me is the way The Cure was for him. And so The Cure is a huge part. And when I saw they were coming, I was like, might not have that many more chances to see them. I don't know how much longer Robert Smith is going to be willing to put on the old lipstick and zhuzh up that hair. So we got to do it.
We got to do it. I saw them in 2008 at the Hollywood Bowl. And so this will be my return to crying at the bowl for Robert.
15 years later. 15 years later.
15
Wow.
years later,
Wow. That's
yeah.
amazing. Before I let you go, is there anything, let's make sure we link people to check out your stuff. What's the best place to find you, on the internet so they can find your music?
The internets.
Yes.
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Witty Handle.
At Witty
'cause
Handle.
I've had that Instagram before it was a public facing thing, and now I've
Sure.
had that handle for so long I feel I can't change it. I have to do the shameless plug. I know that we talked about cynicism in our journey as performer people, but I get asked for creative guidance from new folks so much that I have just started offering private acting coaching.
That's wonderful.
So you can go to silentgentertainment.com and book me for a private session to get ready for an audition or work on a piece of material that you really want to understand.
I love that.
I will be happy to open up my my archives of experience and knowledge. And,
I love that.
and share it. The music is La Femme Pendu or Fainting Party. You can find all of that through the grams.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's it.
Good.
I have to say, Jacob, like I'm so happy that you asked me to do this and also convinced me to come out of my my podcast sabbatical.
I knew I didn't want to go into it too much because I wanted to make sure you were comfortable, but I just, as the audience knows, she was initially not wanting to, go on a podcast anytime soon, but she came around and I'm so happy that she did because I think it was great. And did you have fun?
I had a great time. We talked about all my favorite things.
All my favorite things. All my favorite things. Thank you, everyone. Once again, it was such a joy to go through that album with Allison and talk about her life and her journey. And there's so few people on the podcast that I get a chance to talk about that acting side of my life. Everybody that I've had on here so far has been from a music connection. And while that's a big part of her life and her career focus right now, having that connection through theater and through acting and through film and television, it's really cool because that is a huge part of my life that I don't get to talk about very much, but it really informs a lot of who I am as a person. There's a lot of that theater kid. You've heard me joke about it before, but I was born with jazz hands. It's just, it's just something. It's in my nature. So before I get you out of here, make sure to check out that sponsor of mine, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof for your 30% off your first year getting your music out there. And make sure you follow all those links. Everything that Allison mentioned on the show, it'll be linked in this episode. And you can check out everything she's got going on. I highly recommend you check out La Femme Pendu. I hope I did that good one last time for her. I think I can see her down here giving me a thumbs up. So with that, thanks for listening to Waterproof Records. We'll see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna
Waterproof